I will never forget the case of Lisa Hartwell. She was an avid runner, just like me, and she unknowingly ran into a deadly predator's hunting ground. It happened despite all the wildlife warnings that had been issued. It's a stark reminder that even familiar places can hold hidden dangers. It was October 7th, 2016. The affluent Boulder, Colorado neighborhood of Wildwood Heights was still and dark. The upscale residential development had been built just 5 years prior, right on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills. Winding streets were lined with modern homes, backing up against natural open space and wildlife corridors. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator for a local tech company, was starting her daily 5 a.m. jogging routine through the neighborhood's carefully planned streets and cul-de-sacs. Lisa had moved to Wildwood Heights 2 years earlier, drawn by the community's promise of mountain living with urban conveniences. She was a dedicated fitness enthusiast. She maintained a strict exercise schedule despite her demanding career, often rising before dawn to complete her 5-mile run before heading to the office. Lisa's morning routine had become sacred to her, a peaceful time when she could clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air and stunning views. The neighborhood had been experiencing an unusually dry autumn, with drought conditions extending well into what should have been the wet season. Local wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas. Deer, elk, and their predators were being forced to venture closer to human settlements in search of water sources. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings over the past month, including tracks found in backyards and a large cat spotted near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard about the wildlife warnings, but dismissed them as typical Colorado mountain living concerns. She continued her early morning runs without altering her route or carrying any deterrents, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wildcat species. Adult males can weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters. They rely on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert that ran beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the carefully planned hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted across the street and disappeared into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows of the concrete drainage opening. The attack came without warning as Lisa passed within 10 feet of the drainage culvert. The 140-pound mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance between them in a single powerful leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades with devastating force, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt street, while his weight drove her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck. his 4-inch canine teeth punctured through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, each swipe opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to pull Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert, where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The mountain lion's killing bite proved instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day, after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then, on August 19, 2017, Felicity Grant arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado. It's a vast wilderness area known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. The mountainous region stretches across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails that attract outdoor enthusiasts. However, these same wilderness areas also serve as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail close. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. "There are moments I can't shake, stories that stay with me long after I've read them." The tale of Felicity, the influencer, is one of those. She was found 3 days after she went missing, the victim of a mountain lion attack. It was a gruesome end, but also a tragically avoidable one. Felicity had a history of confrontations. There was the park ranger she berated, demanding to speak to his supervisor about his incompetent fear-mongering. Another hiker, Maria Santos, tried to warn her about hiking alone at dawn, but Felicity dismissed her, claiming jealous locals were trying to sabotage successful influencers. She chose the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail, ignoring the kilo signs, believing they didn't apply to her. She even tore down warning notices, insisting she had a right to use public trails. Mountain lions are apex predators, perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain. Adult males can weigh up to 180 pounds and a mere over 8 feet long, with powerful hind legs that can propel them up to 40 feet in a single leap. Their retractable claws, up to 4 inches long, are designed for gripping prey, and their 4-inch canine teeth are positioned for delivering fatal neck bites. These solitary hunters prefer to ambush their prey, attacking from behind and above, using stealth and patience. They are particularly drawn to prey that exhibits erratic movement, heavy breathing, or other signs of distress. Felicity began her solo run at 5:30 a.m., deliberately choosing the pre-dawn hours to avoid other hikers. She wore noise-cancelling headphones and carried a backpack containing raw steaks for her post-workout meal. The combination of her erratic running, heavy breathing, and the scent of fresh meat created perfect conditions to attract a hunting mountain lion. A 140-pound male mountain lion had been actively hunting in the area, and his territory included the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail. The predator detected the scent of fresh meat from over a mile away and began tracking Felicity's movement. The cougar stalked her along the ridge, using rocks and trees to remain hidden. As Felicity rounded a sharp bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a boulder approximately 15 feet above the path. When Felicity passed below, unaware due to her loud music and arrogance, the mountain lion launched itself in a devastating aerial attack. The predator struck Felicity from behind, his claws raking down her back, while his front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. But she'd also noticed moments of vulnerability, when he pressed against the back wall, briefly softening when he thought no one was watching. The shelter's protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. But Jennifer had convinced herself that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that he needed one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. The room was small, just 8 by 10 feet, concrete walls, a metal folding chair. Designed for safety, they said, but there was nowhere to run. I think about that sometimes. I remember reading the account of Jennifer's final moments. Diesel, the dog, stood rigid in the center of that room, his eyes fixed on her. She sat and spoke softly, unaware, they say, that she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came when she stood and took a step toward him, a gesture of peace, meant to raise. He saw something else. His 75 pounds launched across the room, jaws aimed with terrible precision at her throat. The scream, they say, was cut short. His teeth sank into her neck, crushing her windpipe, severing major blood vessels. The grip was unbreakable, bred for combat. He shook her violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Blood sprayed the concrete walls. Others heard the scream, rushed to the door, but it was locked from the inside. By the time they got in, she was motionless in a pool of blood. Diesel stood over her, muzzle stained red, eyes burning with aggression. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her dream of becoming a veterinarian ended by the animal she hoped to save. Diesel was euthanized. The investigation, they say, was thorough but predictable. Jennifer had violated protocols, ignored warning signs. The shelter implemented new MEs, electronic locks, buddy systems. Her death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools, a reminder that good intentions aren't enough. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but for wildlife conservation, not domestic animals. Some animals, no matter the love, remain dangerous. It was April 17, 2018, a humid day in Florida. The Sunshine Primate Sanctuary claimed to rescue primates, but exploited them for tourist photos. 30 primates lived in substandard conditions. Jessica Rodriguez, a 31-year-old veterinary technician, visited with her husband, Carlos. She thought it was a legitimate conservation effort. She'd always loved animals, documenting their care throughout her career. She'd earned her degree, working nights to pay for school. Her passion for primates led her to volunteer at sanctuaries and support organizations. She believed her visit would help promote conservation through the photos she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica participated in an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla from a defunct research facility. A chain-link barrier separated visitors from the enclave, with no supervision. Silverback gorillas are powerful. They can weigh up to 400 pounds with the strength of 10 men. They're intelligent, complex, territorial, and aggressive when threatened. The moment Jessica's hand passed through the barrier, everything changed. I can only imagine the shock, the pain as the 350 lb silverback grabbed her arm. It's a stark reminder that even apparent calm can mask the instincts of a territorial animal. Gorillas, I've learned, communicate through complex body language and vocalizations. They can shift from calm to violent behavior in seconds. Their hands, so like ours in some ways, can grip with crushing force. Their powerful jaws hold sharp canine teeth, capable of inflicting severe wounds. Jessica had approached the barrier with her camera, hoping to capture images that would convey the gorilla's intelligence and emotional depth. King appeared calm, sitting near the fence. His massive frame was relaxed as he observed the human visitors with apparent curiosity. She began photographing him, excited about the conservation message she could share through these intimate portraits. But then, the fatal moment. Jessica decided to reach through the fence to touch King, believing that physical contact would create a more powerful image for her conservation advocacy. She had observed the gorilla's calm demeanor and interpreted it as friendliness, rather than the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. King's reactions was instantaneous and devastating. He grabbed her arm with crushing strength and pulled her against the chain-link fencing. Jessica's scream of shock and pain filled the facility as King's grip tightened with bone-crushing force. Visitors tried desperately to free her, but the gorilla's strength was far beyond human capability to overcome. His massive hand maintained its crushing grip on Jessica's arm, while his other hand reached through the barrier to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. The silverback's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault, his powerful hands inflicting devastating trauma to Jessica's head, neck, and arms, while she remained trapped against the barrier. Her attempts to break free only seemed to increase King's aggressive behavior, as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats to his territory. Her movements grew weaker as massive blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her body. King's grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier, his territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion into his domain. Within minutes, Jessica's struggle ceased, as King's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form, while displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached the enclosure. Emergency responders arrived with tranquilizer equipment, but Jessica was already dead from massive trauma. The investigation revealed that Sunshine Primate Sanctuary had been operating as an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting both animals and visitors for profit, while providing inadequate safety measures and animal care. The facility was immediately raided and shut down by state authorities, with all primates relocated to legitimate sanctuaries. King was transferred to an accredited facility with proper containment and enrichment programs, where he could live out his remaining years in conditions appropriate for his species. Jessica's death prompted enhanced regulations for facilities claiming to operate as animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of existing wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation supporting legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring that her genuine passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protected great apes rather than exploiting them for profit. It was March 18th, 2017, and the upscale Asheville, North Carolina neighborhood of Mountain View Estates was experiencing the first warm evening of spring. The residential development, built on the slopes of the Blue Ridge Mountains, featured large lots with mature trees and natural landscaping that blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds through the neighborhood's winding streets, caring for the pets of wealthy residents who relied on her services. Maria had been working as a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among Mountain View Estates' affluent homeowners who appreciated her reliability and genuine love of animals. She often walked multiple dogs simultaneously, managing up to 6 animals at once while maintaining perfect control and ensuring each pet received individual attention. Maria's income from dog walking helped supplement her day job at a local veterinary clinic, allowing her to support her teenage daughter as a single parent. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, with builders required to preserve mature trees and maintain natural wildlife corridors throughout the community. Recent construction of additional homes had disrupted established animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity in mountain communities, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during her 3 years of walking dogs in the neighborhood. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters from the local animal control office. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German Shepherds and a Golden Retriever, along the community's main street, when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. Mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I've seen what bears can do when surprised or cornered. They can run up to 35 miles per hour. They have the strength to break down doors, overturn cars. Their claws and teeth are capable of inflicting devastating injuries. Maria discovered this firsthand when she approached an intersection one morning. Garbage cans had been placed there for pickup. She saw a 300-pound female black bear with 2 cubs rummaging through the containers. The mother bear had torn open several bags and was feeding on discarded food while her cubs played nearby. Maria immediately began backing away slowly, but the 3 dogs she was walking became agitated and started barking aggressively at the bears. The mother bear's protective instincts were triggered. The mother bear and cubs were successfully relocated to a remote mountain area away from human populations. Maria's death prompted immediate changes to Mountain View Estate's waste management protocols, including the installation of bear-proof garbage containers and new guidelines for refuge. The community also implemented an early warning system for wildlife sightings and began requiring all residents to remove potential attractants from their properties. It was October 15, 2016. And the Georgia sun was setting over Rebecca Martinez's 10-acre property, casting long shadows. The constant barking that echoed across the land had become the soundtrack of her life. 40 rescue dogs, each one carrying the scars of abuse, neglect, or abandonment. At 34, Rebecca had spent 8 years building her unofficial sanctuary, taking in the dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch. The aggressive ones, the biters, the animals marked for immediate euthanization. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company on the remote property. Rebecca's neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman, who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property anymore, moving between and close, with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends who still visited noticed the changes in Rebecca. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but Rebecca dismissed his concerns as jealousy over her dedication. The local veterinarian had stopped making house calls after Rex had lunged at him through a fence gap, requiring stitches. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate rather than approaching the main compound. The main enclos housed her 3 largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix with a history of severe abuse; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed whose face told the story of his fighting past. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these 3 had been forming an alliance over the past few weeks, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them. The warning signs had been there for anyone trained to recognize them. The 3 dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls, and displaying coordinated territorial behavior when other dogs approached. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone and emotionally invested in seeing progress, I've always been drawn to stories where the wild and the domestic collide. I remember reading once about a woman named Rebecca, and her story has stayed with me ever since. She ran an unlicensed animal rescue, a place of second chances, but also a place where the line between savior and prey blurred with terrifying speed. Rebecca's days were filled with the routine of caring for these animals, a routine that masked an ever-present danger. Each evening, she faced the most perilous task: feeding time, 5 buckets of kibble, the clanging metal a dinner bell to the waiting dogs. I can almost feel the dampness of the ground after a thunderstorm, the air thick with humidity as she approached the main enclosure. 3 large dogs pressed against the fence, their eyes locked on the food. Rex was the first to move, but as Rebecca struggled to regain her balance, something shifted in his demeanor. His eyes, once focused on the kibble, now locked onto her. In that moment, she wasn't the woman who had saved him. She was competition. The attack came without warning. 90 pounds of muscle slammed into her chest, sending her crashing to the ground. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh with devastating force. Titan and Scar joined the assault, pack instincts overriding years of rehabilitation. Blood soaked into the muddy ground as the dogs continued their relentless attack, their growls mixing with Rebecca's weakening cries. It lasted nearly 10 minutes before they finally backed away. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the scattered kibble that had triggered the frenzy. For 3 days, her body remained undiscovered. It wasn't until a delivery driver arrived with dog food that the scene was uncovered. The 3 attacking dogs were still in the enclosure, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations, leading to new regulations. But for those who knew her, the rules came too late. Then I think of Camille Morel, a fitness instructor in France, who sought tranquility in a safari park. It was April 3rd, 2017, inside the Thor Zoo Safari Park, the wolf sector adjacent to the bison paddock, meant to mimic the wild stillness of Yellowstone. Camille, a woman of routine and precision, decided to spend a weekend there, seeking a wilderness immersion close to Paris. She'd stayed once before, and remembered the tranquility of waking to animal sounds instead of traffic. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector, separated by natural barriers and double fence zones. The park ASD guests the viewing area was completely secure. Camille trusted the system. Her goal that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, the same as she did every morning at home. The zoo's landscape was a strange fusion of natural calm and controlled wilderness. At dawn, the service road and the inner track appeared nearly identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light flattens contrast. Beyond the chalet's edge stretched a gravel service road used by rangers and tour jeeps. The wolves' territory extended across nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. That morning, a scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a small utility vehicle through. Overnight, frost had iced the latch mechanism, preventing full engagement of the double lock. And when one of the workers received a call about a mechanical issue elsewhere, he left under maintenance override without confirming it was secure. The gate's interlock was meant to be re-engaged once staff passed, a step that failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and a small water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path that bordered the guest area, seeing no posted signs. It still haunts me, the image of those wolves. 3 of them, restless from the scent of human movement after a cold night. A jogger, Camille, unknowingly crossed into their enclosure. She thought the barrier must be nearby. She'd seen them behind fences before. But the wolves didn't charge at first. They emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. When they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc, she froze. She turned, saw the empty stretch of gravel behind her, and started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper, watching from above, saw Camille glance back once. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel, and she fell forward, hitting hard. Before she could push herself up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward with a violent jerk. The zookeeper sounded the alarm. The response vehicle was rerouted, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes. Within normal range, they said, for a keeper-initiated emergency call. But it was too late. 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward. But one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived within 10 minutes in a vehicle. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low and jaws working. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. One ranger checked for a pulse and found none. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations, and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort. Later that afternoon, Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thori Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family. The park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclos audit were conducted. Thori Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016, and the scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats, in a collection of chain-link enclos that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat, while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cats sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of three sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal grey area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. The lion's jaws clamped down on Ashley's neck, his canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. Caesar continued his assault, claws raking, bite crushing. Ashley's movements grew weaker, blood loss and spinal trauma overwhelming her. Jake's screams brought the owner running, but it was too dangerous to intervene. Ashley was gone within minutes. The investigation that followed revealed the facility was operating without permits or insurance, violating safety regulations. Caesar was relocated. Ashley's death devastated her family, prompting her university to implement enhanced safety education. Then there's the story of Giovanni Russo, May 21, 2018, Grand Paradiso National Park in northern Italy. He'd worked those slopes for over a decade, an alpine guide, leading trekking tours with his wife, Eleanor. He was practical, experienced, knew when to turn back, when to press on. He saw himself as part of the balance between humans and wildlife. The couple specialized in remote routes, minimal disturbance. He often told clients predators avoided people. That weekend, the trek was routine, a mild ascent, one night at a campsite near the Meadow of Almany. His clients, a pair of mid-aged hikers from Milan, had little backcountry experience but trusted them completely. But someone had left a pack of trail mix open near the fire pit, scraps from dinner tossed in the same area. Wolves in this region averaged 60 to 70 pounds, lean grey coats blending into the forest. Normally nocturnal, they hunted red deer. But in recent years, rangers had observed younger wolves venturing closer to human camps, especially when food waste was accessible. Just before dawn, around 4 a.m., Eleanor woke to soft rustling near the cooking area. Then a faint growl. She thought it was a fox at first, until she saw silhouettes clustered around the fire pit where the unsealed food bag lay torn open. She whispered for Giovanni, who unzipped his sleeping bag and grabbed his flashlight. He stepped outside alone, walking towards the food zone. The beam of his flashlight caught 3 wolves standing over scattered wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised, paws firm. He shouted again, clapping his hands as he took another step forward, closing the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm. Giovanni jerked back, but a younger one followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. A rare, catastrophic injury. He fell backward. Blood pulsed through his injuries. The wolves held their ground, circling the dropped food bag. Eleanor tore from the tent with a burning stick from the fire pit. I've read accounts of people freezing in terror, but that's nothing like the real thing. I can only imagine the horror those clients felt, trapped in their shelter, as they watched Giovanni collapse, a pool of blood spreading around him. Eleanor's scream, the desperate swing of the torch. It's a scene that replays in my mind. She struck one of the younger wolves, and it retreated, the others scattering with a final growl into the darkness. She knelt beside him, whispering his name, pressing her hands against the wound. His chest moved once, and then nothing. The signal was weak at that altitude, but someone managed to climb a nearby slope to reach park emergency services. Rangers arrived just before sunrise. They found Giovanni's body where it had fallen, partially covered by his wife's jacket. His face was intact, but the left side of his neck, deep, crushing injuries. The investigators determined that the fatal wound likely occurred when Giovanni twisted as the wolf held his arm, a freak tear along the artery that caused near-instant collapse. Officials ruled it a food-provoked escalation involving juveniles, noting that the wolves had been feeding near unsecured rations. A short-term monitoring and deterrence program followed, but no culling was ordered, as the pack showed no further boldness toward humans. Giovanni's funeral was held 5 days later in Josta. I've spent years studying these kinds of incidents, searching for patterns, trying to understand what drives these tragic encounters. Sometimes it's a simple misjudgment, a moment of carelessness that has devastating consequences. Then, on July 15, 2016, the Lawson family arrived at the remote Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India. I've seen photographs of that place. The vast mangrove delta stretching endlessly, a maze of tidal channels and dense vegetation where the Ganges River meets the Bay of Bengal. Ancient mangrove trees rise from the brackish water, their aerial roots creating an impenetrable network. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but also one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems, where saltwater crocodiles lurk beneath the surface and venomous snakes coil in the canopy above. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent from London, had insisted on booking the most expensive boat tour package available. She was known for her demanding personality and unwillingness to accept limitations. She had already berated their local guide, Ravi, multiple times during the morning briefing. Her husband, David, a 45-year-old investment banker, tried unsuccessfully to moderate her increasingly aggressive behavior. Their teenage children, Emma and Jake, watched uncomfortably as their mother dismissed every safety warning as unnecessary fear-mongering designed to limit their premium experience. Ravi, despite his 15 years of guiding experience in those treacherous waters, found himself intimidated by Genevieve's constant threats of negative reviews and demands for closer wildlife encounters. The motorboat had been equipped with safety barriers specifically to keep tourists safe from the apex predators that ruled this ancient domain. But Genevieve viewed these precautions as obstacles preventing her from capturing the authentic jungle photographs she demanded. The Sundarbans mangroves serve as the exclusive hunting ground for the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators that have adapted uniquely to this aquatic environment. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers and have developed an unusual willingness to hunt humans in water. They can weigh up to 400 pounds and measure over 10 feet in length. These magnificent cats possess 4-inch canine teeth capable of crushing windpipes and delivering fatal wounds within seconds. Their distinctive orange coat with black stripes provides perfect camouflage among the dappled shadows of the mangrove forest, making them virtually invisible as they move silently through the water. During the afternoon tour, their boat approached a narrow channel where Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks along the muddy shoreline. He immediately cut the engine and whispered for complete silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through the area. Despite his urgent warnings about remaining in the boat, Genevieve became frustrated with the distance and declared she needed closer photographs. Against all protests from her family and guide, Genevieve stepped over the safety barrier and lowered herself into the chest-deep channel water. The murky tidal water concealed her movements as she waded toward the mangrove shoreline, camera held high above her head. Unbeknownst to the group, a massive 400-pound male Bengal tiger had been resting in the dense vegetation upstream and had detected their boat's engine minutes earlier. Sundarbans tigers are ambush predators that use water as their primary hunting medium, approaching prey with complete silence while swimming. This particular male had successfully killed humans before and recognized the splashing sounds of vulnerable prey entering his territory. The tiger slipped into the water upstream and began swimming toward Genevieve with only its eyes and nose visible above the surface. When Genevieve reached the muddy shoreline and began photographing tiger tracks, she remained completely unaware of the approaching predator. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, using its powerful limbs to propel itself through the murky channel with deadly precision. The attack erupted from the water with explosive violence. The massive tiger surfaced directly behind Genevieve and immediately clamped its powerful jaws around her throat from behind. The 4-inch canine teeth punctured through her neck muscles and crushed her windpipe with over 1,000 pounds of bite force. The tiger's signature killing technique involved suffocating prey by crushing the throat, and the massive prez collapsed her airway instantly. That day's assignment was simple. Document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had been increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. These wolves could travel up to 20 miles in a single night, driven by hunger across the frozen ground. Their diets shifted with the season: deer in autumn, carrion, or smaller mammals. In the hard months of winter, when prey vanished beneath ice or snow, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. A human scent, faint and unfamiliar might still trigger that ancient reflex to follow, test, and close the distance. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the same warnings that morning, but didn't take them seriously. He had checked his flare gun, but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted fast, gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor made several radio attempts that went unanswered, assuming battery failure from the cold. When evening came and Nikolai still hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route before dark. Yevgen rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight mounted on his snowmobile and a sidearm holstered under his coat. The tracks were faint but visible, a single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in snow, its headlights still faintly glowing. The tracks showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice. Around the site, another pattern emerged, paw marks deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines, evidence of pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded through what Yevgen later described as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. A snapped branch at chest height and a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. The forest was unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed that the surrounding prints showed at least 4 individuals. 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle from the nearest post to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered, even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalna for examination. The autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss, with multiple punctures to major vessels, and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae, consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. Then, almost a world away. It was June 14, 2015, and the Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida, was settling into another warm summer evening. The gated community, built around a series of interconnected retention ponds and decorative canals, had been marketed as a tropical paradise for retirees seeking the Florida lifestyle. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of Margaret's call, but the alligator had already retreated to the deeper water with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through the night to locate and capture the reptile, using specialized equipment to safely extract both the alligator and Walt's remains. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the large alligator to his property, creating a dangerous situation that culminated in the fatal attack. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the community's water safety protocols, including the installation of warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. On September 8, 2014, the vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the blazing afternoon sun, sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teeming with wildlife. Not far away, Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was on his first visit to Florida. He was celebrating a recent promotion with a cross-country road trip. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending his weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest. His engineering background gave him confidence in analyzing risks, but his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips with his father and uncle. His methodical approach had made him successful, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence in his ability to assess and manage dangerous situations. He enjoyed taking photos of his travels. That afternoon, Michael joined a small group airboat tour that promised close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, had repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep hands inside the boat. I've always been fascinated by the raw power of apex predators. It's almost incomprehensible. Take alligators, for example. Adult males, perfectly adapted for ambush hunting in water, can reach 14 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds. The force of their jaws is truly terrifying. Over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. They can launch themselves out of the water with explosive speed, seeing any movement as either food or a threat. I remember reading about a particularly tragic incident on an airboat tour. It had been going smoothly for about an hour when the guide spotted a massive alligator sunning itself on a mudbank, only 20 feet away. This reptile was huge, easily 12 feet long and weighing over 800 pounds. It was perfectly still in the afternoon heat, a prehistoric form barely moving. One of the passengers, a man named Michael, began taking pictures. He was excited to capture images of such an impressive animal to show his colleagues back home. But his enthusiasm quickly overtook his caution. He leaned farther and farther over the edge of the boat to get a better shot. Then the unthinkable happened. His phone slipped from his hand and began falling toward the water. Without thinking, Michael lunged forward, extending his body over the side of the airboat, desperately trying to catch his expensive device before it disappeared into the swamp. That sudden movement triggered the alligator's attack. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water like a missile, aimed directly at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed desperately at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat while the alligator maintained its grip on his arm. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its devastating grip. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and a drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing additional trauma and ensuring its prey could not escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the following day, when wildlife officials located the alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about prioritizing photography over personal safety. It was July 8, 2017. The Detroit summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance. But tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs. Animals that saw humans not as providers, but as competitors. Despite explicit warnings, she slipped away and entered the restricted zone. The maintenance area brought Kendra within direct reach of Boso, the sanctuary's dominant male. He was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. When she approached the barrier and raised her camera, Boso interpreted this action as a direct challenge to his dominance. The primate lunged forward and grabbed Kendra's extended arm with crushing force. I've seen the aftermath of chimpanzee attacks in my work, but the details always haunt me. Consider the case of Kendra, a researcher who suffered an unthinkable tragedy. The force of the chimpanzee's bite was meed at 1,300 lb per square inch, enough to immediately fracture bones. Boso, the chimpanzee, instinctively targeted her face, hands, and neck. His canine teeth, over 2 inches long and razor-sharp, tore into her. His powerful hands ripped at her clothing, his feet kicking violently. For nearly 2 minutes, he maintained his grip, simultaneously biting and clawing. Her facial bones were crushed, large sections of skin and muscle torn away. Major blood vessels in her neck were severed, causing massive bleeding. Her attempts to defend herself proved futile. Her free hand was severely mutilated, several fingers crushed by his powerful jaws. The coordinated nature of the attack prevented any possibility of escape. Another researcher, Peter, heard Kendra's screams and rushed to help, using high-press water hoses to drive Boso away after nearly 2 minutes. But by then, Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries. The massive blood loss, combined with shock, proved fatal within minutes. She died before emergency services could reach the remote island. The investigation focused on security failures, and her family filed lawsuits. It was February the 9th, 2014, near Langer, Saskatchewan. The morning light filtered slowly through the northern boreal forest. For 2 men setting out that day, it seemed like just another trip into familiar woods. David Lasky, 45, a part-time wildlife photographer, lived just outside Prince Albert. He'd spent years tracking animal behavior with remote cameras, learning to move silently and read patterns in the snow. His cousin Jeff, 42, often joined him on winter runs to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. They had grown up hunting and fishing together, though neither carried a firearm anymore. That weekend, after a light snowfall, David wanted to check a set of cameras he'd left by a frozen creek north of Waskew Lake. They'd heard distant howls before, but never close. David believed wolves avoided humans by instinct. The plan was simple: a 2-hour snowmobile ride, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. Wolves in the region were typically grey, thick-coated animals, averaging about 90 pounds. They moved in tight family groups of 4 to 8. The movement stopped within a minute. He pulled David's camera bag close and used his phone to call for help. Reception cut in and out, but a faint signal reached a ranger station. Authorities arrived about 40 minutes later by snowmobile. They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking. Wolf tracks surrounded the site in a broad ring, with drag marks leading back toward the tree line and the deer carcass. The official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. Provincial conservation officers and federal wildlife agents closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from the bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Now, a different scene. December 9th, 2018. Canyon Vista, a hillside community in suburban Los Angeles, was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development, built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains, featured homes perched on steep slopes. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice. He decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot, rather than follow the longer route along the main road. Kevin was an honor student and star athlete, earning recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems. The Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories, up to 100 square miles for adult males. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and occasionally humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, landing squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, opening deep gashes. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance. but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's cries for help to locate him in the brush. It's chilling to consider how easily the wild can reclaim its space, even in our suburban lives. I remember one case, back in 2014, that always struck me. The holding area was separated from Sasha's territory by only a chain-link barrier, bringing Brandon within arm's reach. Brandon began posing for his camera, which was mounted on a tripod. His fatal mistake was crouching down next to the barrier and extending his hand towards Sasha, believing that his confident demeanor would demonstrate his dominance. The tiger's ears flattened, and her tail began twitching. Sasha's attack was swift and devastating. The moment Brandon moved to adjust his pose, the tiger's hunting instincts activated. Sasha launched herself at the barrier with tremendous power. Her paws struck the chain-link fencing, and her claws found purchase on Brandon's extended arm. The tiger's incredible strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, while her powerful jaws snapped through the fencing. The tiger's claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding profusely. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, using emergency protocols to distract Sasha. But the tiger's claws had already caused catastrophic damage, severing major arteries and causing massive blood loss. Brandon collapsed from shock within minutes of the attack. His physical conditioning proved useless against injuries that no human could survive. I've seen the aftermath of accidents, the consequences of neglect. But some cases, they stay with you. There was the story of Brandon, the fitness model. He was using a tiger named Sasha for a photo shoot at a Texas ranch. It was supposed to be a striking image, strength and beauty intertwined. Instead, Sasha attacked him. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was too late. Massive trauma, blood loss. Brandon died within 20 minutes. The ranch, it turned out, was operating illegally, ignoring safety regulations. Sasha was moved to a proper sanctuary, and the facility was shut down. But the enhanced safety education that followed, the lawsuits filed by his family, none of it could bring him back. Then there's the case of Tommy Rodriguez in Missouri, August 19, 2013. The heat was stifling, and the stench of neglect hung heavy over his property. He was running an illegal puppy mill, and financial press had driven him to desperate means. His 20-acre property was a labyrinth of makeshift kennels, housing nearly 80 dogs. Tommy specialized in popular breeds, selling them for high prices to unsuspecting buyers. But the real security on that property came from 4 massive guard dogs, 2 cane corsos, and 2 mastiff mixes. These weren't pets. They were weapons, trained for aggression. The financial press that would ultimately lead to Tommy's death had been building for months. Veterinary bills, feed costs, facility maintenance. Everything was eating into his profits. He started cutting back, even on food for the guard dogs. He didn't understand that hungry guard dogs are exponentially more dangerous. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial. Those dogs, once content to patrol, now viewed everything, including Tommy, as competition. They'd been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks, but Tommy was too desperate, too distracted to notice. On that sweltering August night, Tommy made his final rounds. It was past midnight, and he carried only a flashlight and a metal rod, his mind on finances, not on the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days, not by design, but because Tommy had been too busy. Their hunger had reached a critical point. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching their territory without proper precautions. He walked directly into their domain, carrying nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began with Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerging silently from the shadows. His massive head lowered in a hunting posture. Behind him came the others, Titan, Rex, and Scar. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself, his jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, crushing bone. Titan went for the torso, tearing through flesh. Scar circled, darting in to bite. Tommy's screams echoed across the countryside, but his nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators, focusing on disabling their prey. They had learned patience, and hunger had made them methodical. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. I'll never forget reading about Tommy, the puppy mill owner. In the end, he was consumed by the very animals he exploited. It was a particularly gruesome end. His body lay broken in the dirt, partially eaten by the dogs he used as guards. His remains went undiscovered for 3 weeks. The dogs, trapped and starving, eventually died in their kennels. The stench of death led authorities to uncover the horrific scene. Tommy's illegal operation was exposed. Dozens of breeding females in terrible conditions, puppies dying, and records of sick animals sold across state lines. The surviving dogs, aggressive and unhealthy, were euthanized. Tommy's death ended a large puppy mill, but at a terrible cost. The animals he used for profit became his executioners, their desperation turning them into monsters. Then there was August 22nd, 2014. It was a sweltering afternoon in Cypress Point, a luxury community bordering the Florida Everglades. This gated development, built on reclaimed wetlands with artificial lakes, was the height of South Florida living. Roberto Mendez, a 35-year-old landscaper, worked to maintain the grounds that made Cypress Point so desirable. Roberts built his business from the ground up. He was known for his meticulous work and dedication. His business supported his wife and 2 children, and he often worked long hours in the Florida heat. Cypress Point was built on former Everglades wetlands, with decorative ponds connected to natural waterways. The artificial lakes were filled with ornamental fish and tropical plants, requiring constant upkeep. Recent rains had raised water levels, allowing wildlife to move freely between natural and artificial water systems. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife, and he respected the dangers. He usually checked water features before working near them. But on this day, he was trimming bushes by a pond when his hedge trimmer slipped into the water. American alligators are ambush predators. They can remain still for hours, waiting for prey. Adult females can reach 10 feet in length and weigh up to 200 pounds. They are most dangerous when protecting nests or surprised by humans. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll is designed to drown prey. Roberto waded into the pond to retrieve his trimmer, assuming it was safe. The pond looked peaceful, with no signs of wildlife. The waters are rich with nutrients, a highway for migrating great whites drawn there by the seal colonies. Tara was a 38-year-old marine biology student from Los Angeles. She'd booked the most expensive shark cage diving package, and right away she started making demands. She was known for her entitled attitude, this belief that money could buy her anything. She berated Captain Steve Morrison and Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as she yelled at the crew for what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison had 18 years of experience in those dangerous waters, and he'd dealt with difficult clients before. But Tara's aggressive behaviour and lack of empathy alarmed him. She demanded that the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she'd paid a premium price and deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Chen tried to explain the dangers, Tara dismissed her as an incompetent employee, jealous of successful people. Tara had convinced herself that her student status and booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if the crew didn't give her the extreme experience she wanted. Her disregard for safety became clear when she suggested the crew members should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The waters around Neptune Islands held some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators that had ruled those seas for over 400 million years. These hunters can reach over 20 feet in length and weigh over 4,000 pounds, with massive heads and rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth. Each tooth is up to 3 inches long, designed to slice through flesh and bone. Great whites have the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing praise. The crew had attracted multiple great white sharks using chum. Among them was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, feeding aggressively on the bait. The shark circled the boat with precision, investigating the diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning a fake equipment malfunctions to justify exiting the cage. She thought she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the shark access she felt she deserved. Once submerged in the cage, Tara immediately signaled fake distress, pointing at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison started emergency procedures to bring her to the surface. But instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing she was invulnerable. Her movements created the kind of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female detected Tara's panicked swimming and abandoned the chum bait to investigate. The predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing press. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered Tara's ribcage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. The shark's muscles continued applying press while its head thrashed violently, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've seen what these animals can do. The power in their jaws, the speed of their attacks. And yet, sometimes familiarity breeds a dangerous overconfidence. It's a tragic lesson I've seen repeated too many times in my research. Take the case of Tara, a woman who believed her money could somehow override the laws of nature. She deliberately sabotaged equipment during a shark cage diving operation, violating every safety protocol. The result was horrifying. Massive amounts of blood clouded the water as the shark consumed her. She died within seconds from massive blood loss and the destruction of vital organs. Her family, displaying that same sense of entitlement, filed lawsuits. Stricter regulations were implemented, but too late for Tara. Then there's the story of Harold Thompson. It was March 22nd, 2015, in Alabama. The sun beat down on his property, where the barking of dogs echoed from kennels scattered across 5 acres. At 71, Hank, as everyone called him, moved slowly, carrying water with the confidence of 20 years breeding Rottweilers and German Shepherds. He and his wife, Martha, had built their operation from nothing. What started as a hobby had become a modest business. But age, it seems, had made Hank careless. In his younger days, he would never have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during territorial phases. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, his bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers seeking protection animals. Recently, though, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable. He even snapped at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The veterinarian prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had grown increasingly unpredictable. Martha had expressed concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, but Hank dismissed her worries. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning. The water bowls required filling, work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, his dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have served as a warning. The animal was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times. But today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog, Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels, but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. Rangers later recalled that she didn't seem worried by reports of increased wolf sightings. To Sarah, the wolves were simply part of the environment, something to respect, not fear. These wolves typically weighed between 70 and 100 pounds. They were built for endurance and speed, capable of covering vast distances, and their jaws could deliver a bone-crushing bite. Yet, they rarely bothered humans, subsisting mainly on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. However, when prey became scarce, or the scent of food lingered around humans, their curiosity could be piqued. That week, advisories had been posted about wolves trailing hikers, warnings Sarah likely saw before setting out. Her confidence, statistically, wasn't unfounded. Denali's wolves usually avoided confrontation. Around 4 Oz p.m., a tourist group spotted a lone hiker on a gravel bar below a ridge. It was Sarah, waving before heading upstream toward her campsite. Her last GPS coordinate was recorded before 4:45 p.m. The final photos on her camera showed the river valley and a distant group of wolves following a caribou herd. Tracks later revealed she left the gravel bar for higher ground, intending to cut inland. The first signs of a struggle appeared about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS recorded erratic movements, rapid looping, and then a sudden stop. Investigators pieced together the events through physical evidence and predator behavior analysis. The wolves, their caribou prey now out of sight, had turned toward her. Sarah likely saw them and deployed her bear spray. Residue was found on nearby plants. However, the wind shifted westward, causing the spray to blow back, only briefly deterring the wolves. They circled, emboldened by the dissipating scent. One group flanked her from behind as she retreated up a shallow embankment. Handprints in the soil showed her haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. A wolf likely lunged, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn, suggesting a forceful pull. A second wolf attacked, biting her thigh. She fought back, the empty spray canister beside her pack. But the wolves coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground was churned with soil and hair, indicating a struggle lasting several minutes before she was forced down. Tissue analysis revealed crushing bites to her neck and shoulder, the wolves' method of suffocating large prey. Her jacket was shredded, a torn sleeve found 20 feet away, still holding fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night, with ground crews and a helicopter searching after her vehicle remained unmoved. The next morning, the aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel. Sarah's body was partially covered, her left arm missing, likely taken by scavengers. Her final photograph, time-stamped just 6 minutes before her estimated time of death, was recovered with the camera. The park temporarily closed backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling identified the wolves as belonging to the Tolat pack. Investigators concluded the attack began as a predatory test that escalated fatally. However, because there was no repeated approach or evidence of food-seeking behavior, no wolves were removed. Rangers privately explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who issued a statement urging the park not to punish what it protects. Then, just a few weeks later, on April 14, 2018, Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida. It's a place very different from Denali, but with dangers of its own. I've always been fascinated by the raw power of nature, the kind that can turn a relaxing afternoon into a fight for survival in an instant. It reminds me that we're really just visitors in a world governed by ancient rules. One case that has stayed with me involved a woman named Monica and a very large alligator. Tommy, the tour guide, repeatedly cautioned Monica, emphasizing that her legal background didn't make her immune to the dangers of the swamp. He'd even mentioned that park ranger Sarah Kim had tried to warn her about alligator nesting season, but Monica dismissed it all as government overreach. You see, Monica's visit coincided with peak alligator breeding season, a time when male alligators become incredibly aggressive. Park officials often restrict access to certain waterways during this period, posting warnings in the most dangerous areas. American alligators are truly formidable apex predators. Adult males can reach lengths of up to 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. They possess one of the most powerful bite forces in the animal kingdom, capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds per square inch of crushing prees. Their jaws contain 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth designed for gripping and crushing prey. They can remain motionless for hours before exploding into action with lightning speed. Tommy repeatedly warned everyone to stay within the designated channels, but Monica grew increasingly belligerent. She accused him of limiting her constitutional rights and threatened legal action. Despite Tommy's attempts to keep the group together, Monica broke away and paddled her kayak toward a restricted lagoon, clearly marked with multiple warning signs. She claimed she had every right as a tax-paying citizen to explore any area of the national park. That restricted lagoon was a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator that had been actively defending his territory for 3 weeks. This 800-pound reptile had already driven off several smaller males. The presence of Monica's kayak immediately triggered his most aggressive defensive instincts. The bull alligator detected the vibrations from her paddle strokes within seconds, having been resting motionless beneath the surface, perfectly camouflaged among the submerged vegetation. The attack was swift and devastating. The 800-pound predator launched itself from the water with explosive force, its massive jaws clamping down on the front section of Monica's kayak. The impact capsized her instantly, throwing her into the murky water directly in front of the enraged reptile. As Monica struggled, disoriented and panicked, the alligator immediately identified her as a threat to his nesting territory. The massive reptile's jaws found purchase on Monica's torso, his razor-sharp teeth puncturing through her life jacket and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered multiple ribs instantly, while puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. The alligator then began its signature killing technique, known as the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The 800-pound reptile rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining its crushing grip. The violent rotation generated a tremendous force that tore muscles and caused catastrophic internal injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute as the alligator spun through the water with Monica trapped in its jaws. Her medical background had given her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. Sarah had been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills through countless weekend adventures with Tom. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department, and these mountain getaways provided essential stress relief from her demanding career-saving lives in one of Atlanta's busiest trauma centers. That afternoon, Sarah and Tom were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they discovered something extraordinary: 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass, while their mother was nowhere to be seen. Sarah immediately recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. Black bears, the most common bear species in North America, are particularly dangerous as mothers with cubs. Their aggression and territoriality increase exponentially when they have young ones to protect. I've read accounts where female bears will attack without any warning at all, viewing any human presence near their cubs as a mortal threat. Sarah and Tom were on an engagement trip, seeking to make incredible memories. But Sarah's passion for photography would tragically lead her into a fatal encounter. She began photographing some adorable cubs from what she thought was a safe distance. But her excitement at capturing such rare footage led her to gradually move closer for better shots. Tom, with increasing urgency, repeatedly asked her to keep her distance and leave the area. But Sarah was convinced that the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs continued their playful behavior, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass as Sarah documented their every move. Her photography session continued for nearly 10 minutes as she captured dozens of images. Sarah's fatal mistake was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved to get a better angle for her shots, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200-pound female covered the distance to Sarah's position in mere seconds. Her powerful legs propelled her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah attempted to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward while still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah's position before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back, her razor-sharp claws raking across Sarah's spine and shoulders, while the impact shattered several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help were silenced by the crushing prise on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, her crushing bite force fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased as the mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.